Hey, real quick before we get started, Content Matters with a Z is our content marketing company that helps entrepreneurs tell their own stories to those who care. And here's the thing, we think every entrepreneur that is willing should have their own content platform. And we want to help make that happen, both by working directly with entrepreneurs and by sharing our own stories, exploring the craft of content marketing. Content Matters, one piece of content at a time. Learn more at kazcontent.com. Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, introspective podcast conversations helping build and protect your business one podcast at a time. A KazCM production. In this episode, I chat with Diane Tarshis. Diane is the founder of the Startup Distillery, where she is the startup advisor. We chat about change, building a business you want, outsourcing, and well, we just talk through it all in this wide-ranging conversation. So let's get into it and welcome Diane Tarshis. I heard you on a podcast recently. And something early on in the podcast, you mentioned to-do lists. And I'm like, oh, that hit me because it's like, I'm working through all these things about to-do lists. And there's like so much we all need to get done in a day. And somehow we get caught up in these lists. And I feel like you talk about it because I give even the way that like I see you right now, it's like you're free from a lot of these things. Like somehow you've been able to, it's not to say to-do lists are bad. It's just that we can become the victim of the to-do list. And how do you see to-do lists? And like, anyway, take it any direction you want to go with that. But what all transpired with you is you've kind of uncovered to say, you got to unlock yourself from being the victim of that.
Yeah, both personally and professionally. I guess I'll start with the professional side. So when I'm working with clients, a lot of times they're just paralyzed and they need help prioritizing. And I know for myself, I don't want to be chained to a to-do list, but I need some structure. So I do need to self-structure myself. So for me, it's about priorities. And those may change day to day or within a day. I think we all have those experiences where we set out to do something and then we end up getting sort of redirected as the day goes on. But those high priority things, I'll always sort of use as my touch point to come back to where I'm like, you know what? No, I need to prioritize this thing or these two things and then focus on those. And then, like I said, it may change, but I don't want to be locked in and I don't want clients to be locked in.
Yeah. What are some things that you've done or helped other people do? Because it's like, I understand, I get it. I want to do that too. But a lot of people will just go right back. They'll eventually fall back into it because the days just go and they get something's happening and I just keep adding to my list and I can't get away from it. Are there things that, is it meditation? Is it, what is it? It's not the same thing for everybody, but what are some things that people can do to not become paralyzed by their to-do list and to get focused on their priorities, in your opinion?
You know, a lot of times it's really about accountability. And so whether that is with a friend or with a colleague or hiring somebody like me, having somebody that you're sort of accountable to makes a huge difference. So if I am just sort of working in this vacuum, then there's no real pressure to stay on task or to stay focused. There's also this issue of you're in your head too much. And so you don't really know, you get kind of hung up in your shorts and you don't know which thing is the most important. And I'm one of those people that I need to talk things through. I can't do it in my head. So my younger son, who's been home from college during the pandemic, has suffered through when the weather is nice, we'll go for a walk. And I end up talking through things with him.
Yeah.
Because I just need to talk things through.
Yeah.
And he's so patient with me.
Good for him. Yeah.
So I can't do it in my head because it all turns into like a whole mess. And that's also more on the professional side. That's what ends up happening with clients. So when they know they need to talk to me in a week and that they need to work on their financials or that they need to make some phone calls to find out about suppliers or make a decision about something, that changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how you talk about thinking through things. Like you need to think out loud. You need to talk to someone about it. And it maybe goes into having someone on the other end that respects that, appreciates that, because it's not everybody. It might not be your business partner. It might not be your spouse. They're like, listen, I can't right now, right? Like we have enough other things going on. And so it's maybe making that decision, like who are those people that you can use as an outlet? And vice versa, you can help them in other ways too, whether it's your son or someone else, or sometimes it's just talking to your phone.
Exactly.
Or a therapist or who knows, to just talk through the things, because as you can tell, like I'm just a stream of consciousness. My wife's like, are you done yet? And that's okay because there's an acceptance of that and how you are. And maybe that's why I enjoy having long form conversations on a podcast, because oftentimes it's a way for me to talk through a lot of these things and then write about it and think about it and go back to it. And it's never really done, right? Because the new projects, the new tasks, the new things on your list are going to appear. So how do you manage it? Because it's like anything else. It's like someone going to the gym. They finally start working out. Things are going well. And then inevitably something's going to happen. They get sick. They get hurt. They can't go. There's something came up at work and they stop going. So all of a sudden there's like this line that's drawn. And so it's really about that next level is, can they get back to the gym doing what they were doing before? Or did they get kind of like, they run into that wall where it's like, okay, I'm done. And so, well, yeah, I was working out like 3 months ago, but then something happened and then I haven't worked out since. Like that's similar, because it's like, well, a new project came up and it's like, yeah, now my lists are just crazy again. It's just the way it is.
It's interesting because you just talked about, I think inadvertently, two different things, which is hitting a roadblock and then also things changing. And as you were talking about that, I thought of that saying, the only thing that stays the same is change or something like that.
Yeah.
And so some of that is just being able to adapt. And then some of that is being able to do creative problem solving. So there are all of these pieces, either when things are changing around you or you're getting stuck. And you're right, like my husband's style, I could never talk through this kind of stuff with him. That's not his thing. He doesn't work that way. He's more in his head and he can keep it all organized. I can't. I'm like you, verbal. And that's why I love the work that I do. It's so collaborative. And I love doing these podcasts because I love conversation. And like you, it's amazing how you can figure things out through conversation.
Absolutely. You've talked a lot about being there to be the person you talk to other people and they talk to you. And that's, again, a lot of the work that you do, like helping these businesses, helping these owners uncover, like, how do they get better at whatever it is? And you can talk more about that, but you're the one doing it, right? Like you're not trying to say, I'm going to get this person to go do it for me. All of a sudden now that disconnect is there because that's really like, you've decided, like, I've decided this is what I enjoy doing. I don't want to change that. If that means that my business can't get to this point, perhaps that's okay, because maybe it can get there in other ways anyway. So was that a conscious decision to say, or did you get locked into it to say, you're going to be the one that's really engaged with the client that you're working with? Like you're going to be the one having the conversations.
You mean in terms of scaling, like growing my business?
Yeah, so you're scaling the business and you're obviously at the very beginning, you're the one talking to them. And then a lot of business owners have a decision to make to say, okay.
Yeah.
And there's different reasons, right? And there's no right or wrong to it, but to say you're the one that they get to communicate with and you get to have these conversations with them.
Yeah. It was definitely very much a personal decision and it's my personal style. So over the years, I've been doing this for 25 years or more. And people have come by saying, I want to work for you or you should grow your business, whatever. The fun that I have is the one-to-one client interaction. And if I were going to spend my time managing other people, that would take all the fun out of it. I mean, for me, more growth is more stress. And I'd rather focus on the work that I love doing, which is working with clients, doing that sort of creative problem solving. The stuff that I think is obvious, I mean, it's amazing just based on experience. People come to me and they're stuck and they don't know what to do first or how to navigate some challenge or whatever. And man, that is so much fun. And getting to know people and learning about different industries. The other piece of this on the personal level is, as a parent, I made a decision early on that I wanted to be the one that was home when my kids got home from school, to be able to pick them up from school, to have these conversations. Personal choice. Not everyone wants to make that choice, but I wanted that flexibility. And so that was also a key piece. But I have to say, none of these decisions have to be permanent either.
Yeah. Well, like you said before, the only thing that stays the same is change, right? So if the pivot is going to happen. I've had this question asked, especially early on, but it's been consistent throughout all the years that I've started my business. It's 2013, it's like 8 years or whatever that might be. And how many people work for you? How many people are employed? It's like, talk about the gym reference. How much do you bench, right? It's like these things, and they're really serious. And then they judge your success based on, oh, or, oh, wow. And you'll hear it. Like some people
You feel it.
yeah. And it's
Totally.
interesting though. It would be like, it would almost be like, what's the weather today? Or whatever that for how you doing? Or whatever that first thing is. It was an automatic question that people ask. How many, like if oh, you own a business, great. How many people work for you? That is like somehow society saying that's what you have to have, right? And because it wasn't just one person or it happened 3 times, it was like numerous times.
That's so interesting.
And then even later on, like they want to know. And I've just been fascinated by that. And like, cause I remember being at large companies and then you see like this person, their judgment of themselves is how many people they were managing. Their entire game was to get more and more people layered under them. And again, if that's what they want, that's what they want. I'm not here to say that's wrong. They shouldn't do that. As you said, that's not my personal choice. But I think it's fascinating that that is a question that whether they say it or don't say it, but they do say it, how many people work for you? Like, how did it get to that point? And obviously it's like comparison and all these other types of things and maybe virtue signaling, who knows? But like, it is interesting, right?
It's funny because you're making me think back to my corporate America days. And you're right. How many people are working under you was like, that's a marker. How much you're making is a marker. You know, all of these things are measurements of standard success. It's fascinating to me that you're asked that question about how many people work for you because no one has ever asked me that.
Oh, wow.
And I wonder if it's a guy thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Because people meet me and they assume that I don't work. And so I have a different issue of, yeah, I actually do have this professional life. So it is interesting. And these sort of societal expectations or quote unquote traditional expectations of what success looks like, even within the entrepreneurial world, this whole idea of how much money have you raised and are you scaling? What's that going to look like? A lot of this is, well, I don't know. You know what? To me, it's just sort of BS in terms of.
That's the word. I agree. Yeah.
Right? I mean, because you can be incredibly successful without raising outside funds. And even if you raise millions upon millions of dollars and series after series for your startup and your business, that doesn't mean it's going to be a success or that it's going to be profitable or that you're going to be able to sell it or all of these sort of fancy schmancy things. The people who come to me want to build something that it's something that means something to them. They want something that is going to last and it's their baby. And yes, down the road, they may sell it. They may not. Down the road, they may raise funds, but they may not. And my thing is, you do you. I want to help you do you. You don't need to follow what all the kids at the popular table are doing because a lot of that is, like I said, BS. And what seems like success isn't really success.
Yeah. I like that. I help you do you, right? Like that's important. It is almost like therapeutic in that sense of like helping people uncover that. And you talk about raising money. That's a big thing. You get into the VC world and you start seeing like people start asking those questions and how much money. And then you could like sometimes even pull back the layers. So what does that mean, right? Because people use revenue numbers or those companies are actually losing money, like a lot of money, but they've raised a lot of money. So how do we signal that? Like my business partner is in the M&A world and does wealth management and all these things. And he early on would show me like these numbers would come up like, well, they do $30 million in revenue, like on top line, but they're spending $29.5 million. And again, that's not to say that the business is bad. And who knows, there's so many pieces to what that means. But those numbers are thrown around as like, look how strong I am, look how macho I am, or whatever this is. And then the other end of it, like what you said is even more fascinating that no one's ever asked that question to you. And there's like this empowerment. And I've talked to many women business leaders, even on this podcast. And like one of them talked about being the only woman in the room and what that's like. And it's
I listened to that episode, actually.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. And Jill Saltzman was on the podcast and talked about how moms make the best entrepreneurs. And it's like, yeah, because then you see it, but it's like, okay, well, then you show up and you're out to dinner or whatever. And it's like, the assumption has already been made that you don't work. And it's like, well, that's a lot to think about.
Right. it's like there were all of these pieces and all of these layers to peel back. So as you were talking about throwing the revenue figures around, I was thinking the whole time but is anyone asking the important question of, are you happy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So even if the 30 million in revenues and maybe they're barely profitable or maybe they're not profitable, but are they even happy? Are they even doing what they want? I think the pandemic has one of the few upsides of the pandemic has been that it's forced everyone to kind of take a breath and to step back and think, am I really happy in my life and the way it's balanced and structured and what have you? Am I doing the thing that I want to be doing? I have several clients, one in particular that I'm thinking of, where they just got out of the rat race. They said, you know what? I'm out. And they decided to start this business on their own. They're incredibly well-trained. The husband is a chef. The wife is a sommelier. They spent years working for 3 Michelin-starred restaurants in New York and on the West Coast, all this fancy schmancy stuff. And they realized, you know what? We don't have the lifestyle or frankly, the means to raise a family, to start a family. And so they chucked it all, moved to the Midwest to a farm, and they're starting this business developing canned cocktails and a restaurant and this whole sort of farm-based activity fun center because they were like, we want a life.
That's cool. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's opened the doors for a lot of people to think like, what do I want out of this? Like we've even seen it. There was a time when there's these different business owners we talk to and we do podcast production and we help them create content and tell the stories that matter and that to the people that care, that would even care about listening or reading it. And during the pandemic, we even saw a shift in a lot of people to say, what they want to double down with it. They really want to open up more. They've gone down this path and it's like, I'm ready to take that next step because I want to talk about more things. And a lot of it could just be leadership for their team, right? We've seen that. Like we just want an internal podcast. We want to help build the culture, but like not culture in a way like that gets into the buzzword of what is culture, right? But more in like real people having real conversations about things that matter. And maybe there's some common ground there. Who knows what that is? And so I've seen that play out over the pandemic as well. And I guess like not to transition, but like I just used that word buzzword and it made me think because you don't use buzzwords. Like some words just come out. They're the worst. And that was the funny thing. Like when I talked to Jill Saltzman again on a previous podcast that she hosted, her and her co-host would make fun of people on the podcast when the other person used a buzzword. And it was hilarious. And that's how we started. So like throughout the conversation, we're just like dropping these hilarious buzzwords and it's just ridiculous because it's the same type of thing. It's like these really like questions that come out, like how many people work for you or whatever these, like what's your revenue number, whatever those things are. Then you really can get into these buzzwords. And it's like, I don't know if it's virtue signaling, I used that earlier, or what it is, or it's just like in your dialogue, like you have to drop these words. Like it makes, I don't know, it's frustrating.
To me, it shows insecurity.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what it shows to me. If somebody is really using a ton of buzzwords, immediately red flags go up. And I think that they're trying too hard to prove something. And then I was teaching entrepreneurship actually at a high school the last couple of years. And we went to visit a startup and the CFO was using all of these buzzwords to these high school kids. And I kept translating everything and I thought, why is she doing this? They're high school kids. Or one of the things that I counsel clients is don't use all these buzzwords because it signals that you don't know what you're talking about. Everyone wants, I think, to speak in plain English. Everyone's going to understand you. Occasionally, there's a particular buzzword that might be just right for whatever it is you're trying to get across. And okay, but it's like herbs and spices. I mean, you don't want to overdo it.
Right, right. But it should just happen naturally, right? It's just, the word just comes out and it seems that, because some people can talk and it's like, oh no, it makes sense in the way they use it. And like if you're thinking too hard about it and you're thinking too much about it and you have to drop this word, that's when it becomes too much. But you do hear it a lot. Yeah.
Sometimes they get ruined because people use them too much.
Yes.
Because there's a buzzword that I really liked for the beginning, which was, and I'm going to gross myself out by saying it now, which is disruption.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So early on, I thought, what a great way to describe what I consider to be true disruption.
Yeah.
But it's so overused that it's completely gross to use it now. So it's been ruined.
You're right. I remember starting to hear that word because like industries are being disrupted and technology and all these things. And you're right. It's like makes a lot of sense. But when it becomes overused, authentic and some of these, it's hard because you can be disruptive. You can be authentic. You can, yes, do those. That's awesome. It's just when it's done for this other purpose, maybe to say that you're doing, I don't know. Then it's like you're saying that more to think through as it relates to it. I don't know if this is a buzzword, outsource, but I do think it's an important word because
I like that word.
Yeah, it's a good word.
I don't think of it as a buzzword.
Good. I just want to make sure. Yeah. So
yeah, you're cool.
like if you work at the bank and like a lot of times the banks want to bring everybody, I don't know if that's a great example, but everyone has to work for the bank. Like if you're going to do work at Bank of America, you have to work at Bank of America and they partner with banks and other people as well. But like, and it's when you get into small business, I've seen it both sides. Like there's some people and I've told them like, you need to hire someone to work for you and like literally sits next to you every single day because you need that control. And that again, that's not a bad thing. It's just what you need. Then there's other people like, you'd be better off not hiring someone and outsourcing it. And what's so cool is the borders are open. Like you go anywhere and you can find people in the States, out of the States, and amazing people. And it's not easy, right? Because that's a lot of people. But you can bring so much of the good stuff that's out there and the talent and just the people that are so passionate about what they do to work with you and collaborate with them. And again, outsource it. But there is a fear, and it's not everybody, but there's definitely a fear to get started with outsourcing. Have you seen that? Have you seen it play out with the people that you've worked with that there is a fear with outsourcing?
No, what I run into more is a lack of awareness as opposed to a fear.
Okay.
They're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of people are really open to it and they just want to be able to find the right person. But most of my clients, certainly initially, because I work with people at the earliest stages, like the idea stage, is this going to work kind of thing, to actually getting started and setting themselves up for success. And so that's when they can't afford to bring on somebody to sit next to them. And outsourcing really makes the most sense. So even outsourcing like HR function, that was probably so this goes back many years, but that was the very first sort of arena where there was a ton of outsourcing. And it just made sense because it costs too much to hire somebody full time.
Absolutely. Well, I've heard the example of like you said, there's the unknown, didn't know I could do it. Then there's a trust, like, okay, I'm going to do it. I got to trust it. And that takes time, right? With anything else. And once you've done it more, but then sometimes like you could take a step back and ask some questions like, do you ever go out to dinner? Yeah. Okay. So someone prepares your food for you and brings it to you and says, yes. Well, you're outsourcing it. Does someone you send your laundry out? Do someone
analogy.
Cut your lawn? So you are in effect actually outsourcing some things. Now it gets to your business. Now it's like another child almost, right? Like, and you're babying it and there's money and there's cash. And it's like, if you spend too much, you could go out of business and it's very scary. And I remember like very early on, I was like, I don't want to spend $25 on that. That's just like, might be bad. And so it does take time. And then you get more into, okay, did someone help you draw up your documents? So you got an attorney, you got a CPA, like HR. There's all these different things that relate to it. Someone helped build your office or whatever that might be. So you are outsourcing. And then it's like, there's so many places you can go and the opportunities exist. And it's the gig economy even is just like, I just keep running into new ideas. Just the basic ones that everyone knows are Uber and Lyft, right? And now grocery shopping with Shipped and some of these at Walmart Plus and like all these different things that exist to say the gateway to entrepreneurship is like, oh my God, the floodgates have opened and anyone can get started in it.
Well, I'll tell you, you're talking about this and I'm thinking there's one piece of my own business that I'm dying to outsource, but I can't figure out how to do it, which is the sales function. I hate doing like sales stuff. I'd love to find somebody to outsource that to. That'd be great. But everything else, I feel like you can outsource marketing, you can outsource content, anything, content marketing, content development. You can outsource, I think, just really any function in your business. And I'm sure there's somebody where I could outsource the sales function, but
yeah, well, there are. But I also think, though, like this conversation, someone hears it and they enjoy listening to you and they're not even perhaps looking for someone. I do it. I understand like the more direct one-to-one communication in a sales situation is like someone calling me up and saying, hey, you should work with Diane. I get that. But there's also an aspect of like, I could listen to this podcast, hear you talk and say, this is exactly the type of person I need to reach out to. And I could message you on any different platform. And that's definitely more inbound approach. But at the same time, there's a lot of leverage in media because you can go off and do whatever you have to do. Like I said, I listened to a podcast that you were on last night. Like I couldn't have called you up and asked you all those questions. Someone already did. And I got to listen to it and I got to learn about you and be like, oh, I'm really excited about having this conversation or who knows when someone would hear that. But I think that's the opportunity for sales. And that's why I think content is so useful in all these ways, not as a means to an end only, because there's so many benefits from just you and I having a conversation and learning and thinking through it. And someone on my team can listen to it and your son could hear it one day. Who knows, right? But there is that. And yeah, and then you don't have to talk to him. He's like, I could just listen to your podcast, Mom. Like, leave me alone. So I think that the content aspect of it is that because you're doing it, right? I mean, you are creating content, you're appearing on podcasts. I mean, you're seeing some sort of benefit. Maybe it is just for you to like, I just want to have open dialogue with people, or I want to have open dialogue with the mic and myself and just see what happens. And what has been that journey like for you of creating content, getting on podcasts and having these types of conversations?
You know what? It's been a lot of fun. So we talked earlier about me keeping my business small and just me and wanting to be a parent. I'm in the phase now where I became an empty nester right before the pandemic and decided, okay, it's time to grow the business. And so I'm doing these things that I advise my clients to do. The cobbler is making shoes for herself.
Right. There you go.
Whatever.
Yeah.
That was a stretch there.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
And it's been really gratifying, not only meeting new people, which I really enjoy, and having these conversations, but then what comes out of it. So people picking up the phone and calling me. A lot of people will email first or what have you. I like when people just call me, spur of the moment.
Yeah.
Makes my day fun. So
you can tell like just the demeanor that you have, the way you're having a conversation about it. It's like that other question of like, you really do seem happy with how you've built your business and then the choices you've made. And like you said, of being able to pick your kids up, like everyone has these personal choices. And I think it gets into this whole thing of like, we talked about society and the different types of questions that come about and what people expect of you, because society tells you to want more. But a lot of it comes to admitting to yourself what you want. Like, yeah, this is what I want. I want to be able to pick my kids up. Like someone could judge me for being in line at carpool and be like, shouldn't they be at the office? Or why aren't they at the grocery store at this hour? And all these things. It's like, what's it to you? And it's this thing that like, you almost have to not care what everyone else is thinking. Absolutely. And then really just admitting to yourself and being at peace with that, because that's where all the disruption comes in, right? In your own head to think that, oh my God, what are they going to do? And I can't do this. And I have to work at these hours, because it's like this expectation of saying, I have to be in the office between these hours and these hours. And it's like, that's someone else telling you what you need to be doing, as opposed to you admitting what you think is best, because there's way more to it than that. So,
you know what? You only have one life and you can't live it for other people. I mean, that's not to say that you live in a vacuum or anything, but other than the people you care about who are close to you, you can't care about other people, what society thinks. Or when somebody asks how many people work for you, letting that somehow invade your thinking or your self-worth, or that's baloney. That's other people's stuff. That's not related to you and your goals and what you want. And so the whole idea is, yeah, what makes you happy? And what do you want to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. Another aspect of it, talk about leverage in media, is the technology aspect of it. Like just our conversation today. Someone had reached out via email. There was a link, and that link was then scheduled. This is very basic stuff. This is like Calendly, like premium account. It's like $15 a month or whatever it is. And the Zoom account, $15 a month. And I have some equipment here, whatever. But like this whole conversation that we're having was automated. It's like I could hire a scheduler and pay that person X amount of but the technology, I've seen businesses that spend more on their technology, basically doing functions of humans. It's not replacing those, because someone had to create that technology, right? So it's not like, well, you're decreasing the labor force. Well, not necessarily, because we're actually creating new opportunities for these businesses to thrive. Like Calendly is like, oh my God, what an amazing opportunity that is. And they need tons of programmers and who knows what. And that's just one very basic element. But that's the other way to outsource it. And it's another way to be happy. And it's like I enjoy that aspect. I think it's amazing. I'm like, I hop on here and I click the Zoom links already. I don't have to do anything. Like just have dialogue with people that like, oh, that's an interesting person. I would like to talk to them and do my own stuff that I would like, my own thinking or listening or reading or whatever that is. And then I get to show up and talk to you through, we're in 2 different cities. And it's like, yeah, it's basic. We've obviously been doing it a while, but it's still like, I enjoy that. And that's like you said, makes me happy.
You know what's amazing though is, so I'm going to completely date myself here. And I've had my business for a long time. And so when I started out, there wasn't this technology. So I was limited to only working with people in the United States. And I would work with people on the telephone. And that was it. So I have clients from years ago where I've never seen their faces. And we've never spoken like you and I are speaking through Zoom. But we have these relationships. And what's funny is you hear somebody's voice and you get a picture of what they look like. And then if they sent me a photo for something for my website, then I'd be like, oh my God, that's totally different.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So technology has opened up the world and made it so much smaller. So now I can use Zoom or Google Meet or what have you. And I work with people all over the world, which is so awesome. It is so much fun. I'm working with somebody in Australia and I've had clients in the UK and somebody in Singapore. I mean, it's made the world smaller, which is amazing. And that just blows my mind. And I'll tell you another little story if you...
Please, yes.
So unrelated to my business, 1,000,001 years ago, I co-authored a humor book on mothers-in-law with my best friend from college. And it was published by a real honest to God publisher, like the old fashioned way. And one of the core component of the book was stories from other women and some men running into mother-in-law issues. So mildew, which stands for mothers-in-law do everything wrong. It was like a code word that we used to talk about problem mothers-in-law. And so when we were writing the book, my writing partner was in New York. I had moved here to Chicago and we would visit each other with a floppy disk stories.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If we had written that book today, it would have been so easy to get stories from people all over the world. But back then, that wasn't the case.
Oh, that's so funny. Floppy disk. You're like, what is that? Like your kids are like, what is a
nobody knows what I'm talking about.
No, they do. Yeah. So it's fun because you have to look back like that's how we stored our stuff. And it fit like how much I can't even imagine, like nothing. There's like no data can fit on a floppy disk, like a few documents and that was it. A lot of the things that I'm hearing is it's like you're giving the authority, the audacity to go out and start a business, even if it's like, it doesn't have to be what people think it is. Like, it doesn't have to be all these hours. Like you just said, even in that example, you could go write a book on funny memes in regards to mother-in-laws, whatever that is. And you could go, that could be your business. Like, why not? And that doesn't mean like your kids have to take a back seat to all of that. It's exciting because then it's like, setting up almost like you said, like you become an empty nester, like that's going to happen. There's a transition, or maybe it doesn't, right? Things are changing in that world too, but like there's a transition that's going to take place. We talk to a lot of athletes, right? And so there's a big thing of athletes finish their career a lot of times like in their 20s and 30s. They've been playing sports since they were young. They're at a high level. What happens? And it's like, I've talked to athletes and they said they're running on the field and they just blew out their hamstring and they blew out their knee, whatever that happened. And then they knew it was over. I'm done. Now what?
Right. What's the next act?
What's the next step? And so it's like the change is constant, like you talked about, to say, dabble in all of these things. Who knows what that idea is? Like your friends that you talked about that has said they were doing something and like, we want to change it because they've had these experiences and these ideas and like, let's go do this. And it doesn't have to be that extreme and it could be something super minor and you just go in these different directions and say, keep pursuing it. And I think someone like you, and you specifically, give the people the ability to say that you can do this. And it doesn't have to be what everyone thinks it should be. It could be 1 hour a day, honestly. Like it's not. I mean, it's just, and you can stop.
Well, you know what? It's funny because I have a blog post coming out soon that talks about how you can start a business just dedicating 15 minutes a day. I mean, like there is no magic timetable to starting a business. This is your life,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a client I worked with for years, and she wanted to keep her business small. She was a consultant also in a different, more on operations side of things. And she kept her business small purposely for the same reasons I did. But then again, when her kids were out of the house and grown and flown, she really decided to focus on growing it. And we worked together to change the focus and really seriously grow her business. I mean, things change, life evolves, everyone's circumstances change. I think the theme is nothing stays the same.
Nothing stays the same.
So.
Yeah, no, this has been great, Diane. And I appreciate it all because it's just like you said before, and I felt like we were just on a walk and like sick your son and sitting there and like just having a conversation, just talking through things. And we could do it for hours. Who's reaching out to you? What are the types of people that should be reaching out to you? And who do you want to talk to?
Boy, you know what? It doesn't matter what industry, doesn't matter where you're located, but you've got an idea and you want to make it real, or you've started, you're stuck, and you need some help getting unstuck.
Yeah.
Those are the people I want to talk to.
That's awesome. How do people find you, get a hold of you?
Startupdistillery.com. And you can find my phone number there. Give me a call, or you can email or message. You can also find me on LinkedIn, as you know.
Yes.
Or even Twitter.
There you go. Yes, it's all available. Very cool. It's a very connected world we're in. Well, Diane, it's been such a pleasure to have this wide-ranging conversation with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Eric, it has been my pleasure. Really. Thank you so much.
One of my favorite things about CADSource is the opportunity to chat with amazing business leaders and entrepreneurs. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn or visit us at cadsource.com. Thank you for listening to this CADSource production, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time.
Play my cards right. Up the ante, one blackjack all night. Roll the dice, let it ride. What are the odds I got stay?
Content Matters with a Z is our content marketing company that helps entrepreneurs tell their own stories to those who care. And here's the thing. We think every entrepreneur that is willing should have their own content platform. And we want to help make that happen, both by working directly with entrepreneurs and by sharing our own stories, exploring the craft of content marketing. Content Matters, one piece of content at a time. Learn more at CAScontent.com.